welcome to Women's RX. It's Coach Sandra and Coach Rob Kitty, and today we're going to be talking about and reviewing Rogue Invitational that happened last weekend.
Yeah. So firstly, the Invitational was all done remotely. So basically, everybody competed from their own gym. They were sent out the exact same kit to everybody. It looked like a barbell was included. The D-ball,
Echo bike.
Yeah, the Echo bike. I think that's most of the stuff. The plates all were probably included because they all seem to be exactly the same. There might have been some other stuff, and then every single place, like every gym, was set up exactly the same. They had to set it up, so it's not like the open where you can kind of pick your poison. This one was, this is how the setup looks. It was also set up to be the most efficient thing, I think. So it wasn't like you had to like walk across the floor. Everything was confined to basically a 10 by 10 box, which obviously came with some challenges, but I think they overcame them pretty well. I think the easiest way to start going through this is just kind of like quickly go through each of the events, what you thought about it, and what we liked, what we didn't like. So the first event was the first of two 21-15 nines. So it's 21-15 9 thrusters and burpee pull-ups. The thrusters went up in weight, so it was 135, 185, 205 for guys, and 95, 125, 145 for ladies.
Yeah.
And it seemed like, well, we're pretty confident that the bar height was the same across the board. So it wasn't like, because your own gym, you can set it up to the height. You could notice the shorter athletes really jumping higher. And on the women's side, there was even some of them were using the pad to get from the ground to the bar.
Yeah, because it's a standard. It's something like probably 6 inches above your hand height or something.
No, it was from the ground.
Oh, just from the ground?
So everyone was the same height. I think it was like, yeah, maybe a 6 foot bar or something like that. So you notice that the taller guys like Hochberg were just kind of like hopping up and pulling themselves over, where some of the shorter guys were jumping and their arms were still fully extended, which I'm a big fan of as a taller athlete. I think that standard, we should try and standardize it across the board for some events as much as possible, because just your chest should basically be moving the same, or your chin should be moving the same, whatever you want to call it. And it's not like the short people are at a huge disadvantage. It's not like a 10-foot bar where only some of them can jump. They just have to jump a little higher.
Yeah. And the event is essentially, so they did the burpee pull-ups last year at the Rogue Invitational, so it was kind of like based off that, which was kind of nice because they were kind of sticking tradition a little bit, and people really liked that event from last year, so it was kind of cool for them to see it again. The heavy thrusters, that was cool to see the progression upwards. You see some athletes go big at the beginning, get crashed. Some athletes were smart at the beginning, and then were actually able to go unbroken at the heavier weights. So it was a fun event to watch.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I noticed between the guys and the girls, because they both had a 20-pound jump, the final bar, 20 pounds for a guy and 20 pounds for a girl, like it's just a different percentage because they're jumping from different weights.
Yeah.
I found the crux of the workout was the 185 bar for men and the 145 bar for women. So the 9 reps at 145, if you watch Sarah Sigmund's daughter, who is a beast on a heavy barbell, got to singles on thrusters. And generally you don't want to do singles on thrusters.
And then there was athletes that, went, female athletes, I think Saunders went unbroken on that final bar.
Yeah, Saunders might have gone, I think maybe
there was
two
a couple.
sets.
There was a
was
couple
there anyone
athletes
that went unbroken on it?
There was a couple females that went unbroken on it. They went unbroken on the final 2 bars, but broke up the first bar of 91.
Yeah, I would have to go back and confirm that. I'm pretty confident Tia won, and Tia definitely broke.
Yes.
So it wasn't like you had to go unbroken to do it. And on the guy side, no one went unbroken on that 9. Definitely not. So overall, I thought it was a really good starting event. The 21-15 9 is pretty classic. I like where the difficulty goes up a little bit. It makes you pace it a little bit smarter. And then I think one thing I noticed here that you can kind of see is the burpee pull-ups for a regular person. You could kind of pace that the few rounds, and it just didn't seem like that was an option. Like the best and worst athletes all gunned it on the burpee pull-ups and just tried to get through it.
And you had to, because if like you saw Tia's pace on that, she was flying for burpee pull-ups. Like she went, it was aggressive. She was able to hold on, and that's why she won. Because really, again, that's a heavy weight for her to use. So it was her burpee pull-ups that she won on. Yeah,
I think maybe some of them you could look back and go a little bit slower on, say, the 15 burpee pull-ups before the round of 9 on the women's side. Someone like Sarah maybe, who went, I think a set of 3 and then 6 singles. Probably mismanaged that. If you're going to singles on that and you're someone as strong as Sarah, that might have been a bit of a mistake. So first event, pretty standard classic CrossFit, and then we get to event 2, and this is where things were starting to get like very different, interesting, fun. So event 2 was basically 2 parts. Part A was 50 power snatches for time, 160 at 65.95, and then starting at the 5-minute mark, death by power snatches, but starting at 11.
At 11 reps. And yeah, it was crazy event to watch the EMOM part, like the death by part, because like you could tell right away athletes really were struggling and like wanted to quit so badly. And then you had certain athletes that just like demolished. Like Sam Briggs demolished the female side. We're talking about something like
a round and a half?
Like huge, like something like 40 reps or something.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because it's like when you see a workout like that, you're like, yeah, Sam Briggs is going to crush it. But then she doesn't, and it's easy to say this is a good workout for you. And then a lot of times you say this is a good workout for somebody, they come second, third, maybe win. But when you say like this is a Sam Briggs workout, and then she just absolutely smashed it out of the park, it's always cool to see.
Big difference between the men and the women in that workout. The men's bar just ended up being, I guess, heavier in perspective for that one part of it. I get for the death by. Females were able to get a higher score.
Yeah, strangely though, the men were faster, I think, on the 50 reps. So it was more like the 95-pound bar took more out of the athletes than maybe the actual weight. Even other things that I've heard though is just moving a bigger upper body, because the weight is fairly insignificant for the super high level athletes, and you got to factor in, sure, you're moving 65-pound bar, but your upper body weighs another 30-40 pounds, and then you're a guy 95 but you're weighing another 60 pounds upper body. Like that's just a lot of extra weight to be hinging with, and when you blow yourself up like that, it just makes it hard to go into like that second workout and do anything close to what your initial intentions are.
Yeah, and it was nice to see we went from a strength WOD because of the increase in weight, with a good amount of work capacity, but into a true almost like light barbell cycling cardio WOD. Like you there's a lot of like even though there's not running and swimming and all that jazz, it was like that still sucked. It was a different type of suck for people, I thought.
Yeah. One of the other interesting things about this one is very rarely do you see the super high level athletes movement quality break down in the way that we saw it in that event, because you had to, if you wanted a good score, you had to allow your movement quality to break down, and that was just it. Like you had to round your back, you had to be getting sloppy, you had your shoulders had to round a little bit. Yeah, whereas normally in workouts, when you get to the top level, there's the skill level goes up a lot, so you don't normally move 95 pounds that much, and then you maybe have a set of muscle ups or something at the end where you have to keep your composure. This was not the case. You didn't have to keep your composure. You had to actually go past what looked reasonable and then, rest for 4 seconds and then go again. So to see them break down was kind of interesting, but it also sort of reminds somebody like me that, okay, very, very rarely should you actually let your positioning fall apart that much, because normally there's a reason to keep it together. So it's not like they don't ever break down. It's just normally they are smart enough to understand that you need to keep it for the other movements. And it very rarely ends with a big set of 95 snatches.
But it's kind of nice to see that, they get sloppy too.
Yeah.
Like, it's just good.
And then so the final event of the day, this was one of my favorites. Might have been my favorite event, was 240 heavy double unders. So the rope was sent to them as well. That was one of the things we didn't really mention.
Right. Yep.
The rope was sent to them. I think there was 3 different heights to choose from, like a small, medium, and large. And it was both weighted handles and a weighted rope. And firstly, I'm going to say they managed it really well. That's really hard. If you've ever messed around with them, it takes you, a regular person, like I'm fairly proficient at double unders. I can do 100 double unders most of the time, and you're going to spend like 10 minutes getting your first double under on those, and they just crush them.
I have a heavier rope. I have one of those like Smarter X ropes. It's not as heavy as those. It's like probably half of them, but it's heavier. It's the thicker handles, and it's like, it's hard because it's a slower pull, and so you're trying to time your jump, and it's like, then you get whipped, and it's a little mentally draining because you're like, I'm really good at this. And then that event was followed by so it goes into 2 rounds for time of 60 toes to bar and 24 cal bike for women and
30 cal for men.
30 cal for men, which is a lot of toes to bar in a row.
Yeah. So one other thing I did want to point out is, did you notice Noah Olsen's pace on the double unders?
No, I didn't see
If
it.
you want to go back and watch Noah Olsen's pace, just try and go do regular double unders as fast as he's going. It's insane. He takes some breaks, and I don't know if it works out super well for him. Like he has a really good finish on it, but just the speed his shoulders are moving to understand, like you really struggle to do that with an empty rope or a regular rope, and he was flying through it because I'm pretty sure he was the first or second off of it. And then yeah, like you were saying, they're going into a really serious amount of toes to bar with almost no break in between. 24 cal, 30 cal is not a big break for them.
Yeah, and yeah, the toes to bar is like big set, start managing the set, but then I was also amazed at how hard they were still cranking it on the bike.
Yeah, it was kind of the tale of the two rounds on the bike. The first round was obviously pretty controlled, and the second round is just go hard. So one thing to note, again, so Vellner won it on the men's side,
Haley Adams won it.
and Haley Adams won on the female. I'm not 100% sure what her rep scheme is, but Vellner did sixes the entire way through, from first set all the way in. And I think that's just something to note, that this is an ex-gymnast who was like multiple second place finisher or multiple podium finisher at the CrossFit Games, kind of the who's who when Matt Fraser's not around. Sixes from the start. So if you could take anything from what we're talking about, the high level people, and assert it to what you're doing, that doesn't mean you do sixes. That means a guy that can do 60 unbroken is doing sixes. Yeah. So doing twos and threes and fours in a lot of these workouts with the really high rep schemes makes more sense. And I always look at it pretty simply. The more reps there are in a row, the more you should break them up, the smaller your set should be. If you have a set of 30, like maybe you can go unbroken. If you have a set of 60, you should go really, really small sets, basically, and
it's super because he jumps up and they're quick toes to bar, comes down literally for a second, jumps back up. It's so quick that you almost never know, but it's able for him to keep his pace faster. As if you do a large set of toes to bar, you slow out your pace. You really extend the legs instead of like kicking up faster.
Yeah.
So that's something to note. Like you can change your pace. Yeah, I could go 30 unbroken, but my pace is going to be slower.
Yeah, well, effectively, like in all CrossFit movements, there's three ways to moderate your score. It's cycle speed, rest time, sets. And you can tweak those ones, and I think a lot of ego goes into sets, and a lot of people can beat their, people that are close to their same skill level just by swallowing their pride, breaking the sets up, and then if you watch Vellner, his cycle speed stays super, super fast, and his rest speed, or his rest lengths stay very linear the whole time. And in a workout like that, with that volume, it's gonna break down. I will grant you, like 120 is a lot, and the last 25 to, maybe 15 for the best are still gonna be really uncomfortable. But for the first 100, you should be really in control. And if you're falling apart, you're probably going too fast.
Yeah, and so it was kind of cool to see that amount, that number, because it's like, that changes stuff. Like if it was 30 toes to bar, it'd be a different workout.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that. But it was an interesting workout. I liked it. Essentially that was their high skill gymnastics for the weekend, besides the strict handstand push-ups, I guess. Like that was their gymnastics for the weekend.
It was a reasonable separator, and again, if you understand like some of the limitations that they had, I think I get why they did it that way.
Yeah.
One thing, so this is something you can note is a difference between the online competitions like this, where you can't see your opponents, versus when you can see them. When you finish your last toe to bar, you have to get on the bike for 24 calorie for women, 30 calorie for the guys. If you're in an in-person competition, especially if say this is later in the competition, you see the people around you. You can kind of gauge like, okay, and not like this goes for in person when I'm training with Sandra. If I've got Sandra and we both have to do 20 cal and I've got a 6-second lead, I'm pretty confident Sandra's not going to catch me. But if I have no idea where Sandra is and we're competing on different days, or I don't know what her score is going to be, like I have to haul ass on the bike. And it just kind of, every single person had to do that there and just really, really get wildly uncomfortable for those 30 cal and 24 cal, and I think those are pretty close to the worst possible number to finish on.
It's a bad number just because like you should be somewhat sprinting, but you can't quite sprint it the whole time. It's not a fun number for sure.
And with the bikes, like you can't accelerate at the finish the way you can with a rower, or maybe even like a bike erg, you can kind of accelerate through the finish. you really have to sprint and just not die for the last, somewhere between 15 and 70
Yeah,
hours.
if you've ever been on an aqua bike or assault bike, it's a totally different, like, you might think you might be able to push something at the end, and your push is, like, super pathetic.
Yeah.
It's not even close to what you push at the beginning of a sprint.
So if I'm coaching people and I'm looking back at it, this is something that, again, you should absolutely 100% of the time look at. If your first bike was faster than your second bike there, you fucked up. That's undisputed, because you needed to pace the first bike and you need to go hard on the second bike. So if you did your first 30 cal in a minute 10 and your second 30 cal in a minute 15, you really messed that up. You should be going like 25%, 30% faster at the very least. And lo and behold, Pat Milner, who goes on to take the event, crushed the final bike. He got on the same time as Hepner and beat him by 5 or 6 seconds. And I honestly, I've watched a lot of it, and it was not surprising at all. I knew Milner was going to win that one.
Oh yeah, Milner's strong on the bike.
So strong on the bike and can hurt so bad.
Yeah. Day 2.
So, event 4, starting day 2. Going into this, Vellner and Tia had started to pull away a little bit, sort of what people expected.
But I kind of knew those 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th spots. There was people in there that you're like, oh, I think this person will switch out. I like looking at it, I was like, I don't think she's gonna be there in the end.
Yeah,
just knowing the events.
There was 2 people that jumped out at me. On the men's, so I'll do the men's side. Is I thought Jacob Hepner was not going to be able to hang around. He was in second place going into it.
Yeah.
He had a couple of really good events for Jacob Hepner and a really bad one coming. And BKG was in 6th place, and I figured either he's hurt or he's going to come back in day 2.
And on the women's side, sitting in 3rd place was formerly Jamie Green. It's working, so let's just go like that. It's formerly Jamie Green. Goes by Jamie Simmons now.
Yeah.
So she was sitting in 3rd, and she is a smaller athlete. She's an amazing athlete, smaller athlete, and without, say, muscle-ups or anything coming in with a heavy barbell, I knew the clean and jerk was going to bring her down in the overhead squat workout as well.
Yeah.
And I knew Saunders was underneath there, and I really felt that Saunders was going to pull her way up, and I was correct.
Yeah. So the clean and jerk on the women's side, a couple of things. Let's start with the best.
Oh yeah, the 270-pound clean jerk by Tia, which was so technically sound. It was a beautiful lift. The clean, the jerk, it was just absolutely phenomenal to watch. There's some good competition. We knew Barnhart was going to be up there. Horvath. I thought there was going to be a couple other athletes. They didn't do so well on that I thought were going to be up there.
Yeah.
Like Sarah and Saunders. Brooke Wells used to as a strong athlete. I don't really.
Yeah, I think she's a little bit more powerlifting. Not that she's not super strong, but the problem is in a field of 18, being 7th best in the world just doesn't look that impressive.
Yeah.
Whereas in your field of 40, 7th looks really good.
Yeah.
So, and the women's field was just so strong that it kind of allowed that to sort of like really affect it.
Yeah, so that was a huge takeaway from the weekend, that 270-pound clean jerk. I probably might even like summed up the weekend a little bit, because like right there you're like, oh shit, Tia's gonna win.
Yeah, and so the other thing about that event was the second place finisher was Laura Horvath, and Laura was I think 3rd going into that day, or 3rd or 4th.
She's 4th, yeah.
Yeah, but we knew the 40 strict handstand push-ups were coming, and as soon as Laura got to the top 2, and you knew she was going to be the closest to Tia, you were also like, she's not going to be able to take Tia, and this is over. So for me, that was, in that whole moment of Tia clean and jerking 270, it was very clear that she was going to win unless she got injured or something crazy happened. But it was her event.
Yeah, there's just Horvath has too many holes, and the holes come out, and it's just, she can't play with the big girls.
Yeah, and strangely though, Laura's, it seems to be one major hole. Like, she doesn't seem to struggle. Normally when you see someone who just struggles with handstand push-ups, they're okay at toes to bar, they struggle with muscle-ups, they struggle with like some other stuff. Like, she seems to just singularly struggle with handstand push-ups in all variations of the handstand push-up in a way that I don't recall any other athlete being so singularly caught up.
Maybe Froning back in the day for rope climbs.
With rope climbs? That's true, but I think also if you had given legless rope climbs that year, Froning would have won the event, or would have beat everybody in an earlier event. So, so the women's kind of for all intents and purposes, that was the end of the competition in a lot of ways, even with 2 events to go. The men's side, a little bit more interesting. The separator of the 7, so there was a tiebreaker of 7 clean and jerks for time.
Yep.
With a 1-minute cap. For the men, it was 2:55. For the women's, it was
185.
165.
165.
165 for the women's. By the way, for the people who were curious, Sandra and I both tried this. I edged out Sandra.
It was we were both 27 point something, and then we watched the videos and we're like, God damn, we needed to go touch and go.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't approach that wad right.
No, that's true. I would have come, I think, 6th or 7th on the women's side, and I would have gotten 1 clean and jerk on the men's side, and that would have been a 2019 PR.
Yeah. So it was interesting. Because me and him, we thought we're like, oh, just really fast singles, and then we were doing the singles, and I was like, this kind of sucks too because our bars, we use rubber plates and they bounce way too much. But definitely should have touched and go.
Yeah. And it seemed like the women handled that better. And again, it's hard to tell some of the time if it was, one, you say, were the women's weight too light or was the men's weight too heavy? Which you never know what was the intention going in. I think the probable intention was what the men's looked like, where no one was really able to go all the way unbroken. You even saw Vellner literally fail a rep, which was very surprising.
I think it would have been more fun if you did a 185 bar for the women. It really would have changed the workout.
Yeah.
Even a 175 bar, I think maybe would have really changed the workout.
Yeah, I think that's all it would have taken.
Yeah.
On the clean and jerk side for the men's, you had Vellner, I think, hit 350, which kind of secured him up at the top.
Yeah.
Hebner went out real early. I think Hebner was second last with a failed 330 clean and jerk.
Yeah, not bad for him. So yeah.
But that just shows getting a 320 clean and jerk now is second last.
Yeah.
And getting a 360 clean and jerk is first place by yourself. So it's sort of strange how close the lifting has gotten, where the best lifters haven't gotten that much better in the last 4 years, but the worst lifters have gotten way better.
Yes.
They've shored up those weaknesses. And from that point on, Hebner was out. He was no longer in contention to win, maybe in contention for the podium.
Yeah, and then they brought on Bergner, a strength coach, and he was absolutely hilarious.
So funny.
So funny, just ripping on a lot of the men's ripped on a lot of the men's technique.
Yeah.
He was like, this is the ugliest lift I've ever seen, and technically, it's hilarious, and Chandler Smith, so strong, so naturally athletic, ugliest lifter you'll ever see.
Yeah. Shout out to Chandler Smith, who posted what is now something that's probably dangerously going to slip into my own Instagram.
We love it.
He threw up the night before, PR or ER, I'm going to hit the 360 bar and I'm going to win the event. And he freaking did, so all the credit to him, but it's also fairly shocking how bad that lift was this far into the CrossFit kind of space. We've been doing this for solidly at a high level for a decade now, and to see how bad of a lift that was that won really is going to hurt the CrossFit reputation.
I love that. PR or ER. I just love that saying now.
The interesting thing about that, I find, is if you're Chandler's coach, you've got a professional weightlifting coach saying hey, I could turn this guy into a 400-pound clean and jerk athlete with just a little bit of technique work, but he won the event. It's also crazy. He won the event, so really that's the thing he should be working least on, and he should probably be doing some other stuff that he didn't do so well
Maybe
on.
lighter barbell technique just work.
Yeah. Definitely some skill work in there.
Yeah. Event 5.
Yeah, so event 5 was the chipper. So it was 40 cal row, 30 D-ball squat cleans at 100 pounds, 70 pounds.
Really like that movement.
Yeah.
Very different movement, but liked it because we haven't really seen that at a competition platform.
No, I've never seen it before at all. 30 box step overs.
With the D-ball.
With the D-ball. Sorry, 20 box step overs, I believe, and then 40 strict handstand push-ups, and then back the other way through the step-ups, D-ball cleans, squat cleans, and then the finishing on the row. So they did you have to end with a bunch of calories on a piece of machinery twice that weekend, which I thought was mildly, a little bit torturous, I guess would be the right word for those.
But
athletes.
I really like that they kind of included a strongman event. Maybe call that strongman gymnastic event. I thought that was a really interesting way to get that incorporated because Rogue is known for their equipment. Like that they changed the movement up. They made it a squat clean.
And really lightening the weight.
Yes, 70 pounds for the females.
Yeah, and again, it seemed like the women were definitely moving the weight better than the men were. That just across the board, it seemed like they have gotten stronger at the lighter weights, and the guys seem to be getting stronger at the heavier weights. But with the there were some weird movements I found in that, which is always cool when they add something new in. You start to see some really weird stuff where it's like when you have thrusters, like this is just what a thruster looks like.
Yeah.
But that was, you know, you had some athletes, almost every single guy and almost all the women went with singles, and I don't think it was really smart to do anything other than that after watching it.
It's just too much regripping on the way down. You're actually doing more work in the negative.
Yeah.
It's better to drop and just pull because the negative takes so much from your back and your hamstrings.
Yeah, the only person I thought that could have done it was, like, Katrin did go touch and go. The only problem I had with her going touch and go is she fully extended, like, she muscle cleaned every rep and then did a front squat, and it was like,
no, you're
really wasting
need to
so much time.
You need to really try to catch that in a squat, just like a dumbbell squat snatch. You never want to catch it at the top and go down. You want to catch it in the bottom, stand up. You save so much time that way.
Yeah, so that was a sort of a strange movement for someone who's, again, it is important to point out, like, she's a two-time champ and knows what she's doing and has great coaching and still made this decision. So it might have worked for her, but to me it seemed like she was wasting too much time going all the way up and then just blowing herself out. On the women's side, the only really notable thing was Laura Horvath did kind of what we expected. I think she came like 12th or 13th on that event and was sort of out of the competition from that point on. The men's side was where BKG, my boy, pulled it together, won the whole event, shot himself right up into that podium contention from starting the day in 6th to going in 2nd or 3rd place into the final event. And Vellner, I think, just kind of doing Pat Vellner stuff to come in 2nd place just by himself and heading into the final event.
Yeah, and then the final event was a deadlift overhead squat. What was the reps?
185 to 75 for the deadlift and 155, 105 for the overhead squat.
Not a very, like, I would say that's a very normal overhead squat weight for both divisions. It's not too complicated, it's not too hard, it's just hold and breathe and kind of, you can push the pace on it a little bit. You got to be a little, you're going to flirt with the edge of danger, but you can definitely push the pace on that weight.
Yeah. So on the impressive side of things was definitely Colton Merkins, who won event 1, finished, and he destroyed event 6. Like, it was not even kind of close. He was the only one that attempted to go unbroken, I think, and still broke the 9 deadlifts, but he went unbroken and fast on the overhead squats. He's I think he's like 5'3" or 5'4". He looks small even compared to the other CrossFitters.
Yeah. And
just like one 5'5" block of muscle.
2 events of the Rogue Invitational is pretty impressive. He was there last year.
Yeah.
He had some impressive events last year as well. So it's kind of interesting to see him kind of developing to see. So it'd be interesting to see what he looks like next year.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's an up and comer or not. It's kind of hard to sometimes know because you're like, you win 2 events, but do you fix other holes? Because you go first, last, well, you're just the middle of the pack.
Yeah.
So. And
it is cool to see those home run hitters. But yeah, he did really well. And then overall, though, I think like Noah Olsen had a super good event there too, which locked him into the podium.
Yeah. And
then BKG did well enough to get himself in 2nd place. So the men's podium ended up finishing Pat Vellner, BKG, and then Noah Olsen.
Yeah, and the women's was Tia, then it was Sarah, and then it was Saunders, which is exactly what I guessed. 100% what I guessed. Don't know what happened with Katrin this weekend, which was like your guess.
Yeah, I had Katrin. I just honestly, it's so impressive to see what Cara Saunders did, competing from Australia from 2 a.m. till 7 a.m. I can't figure out how she did that. And like I was the first one to be like, look, she's great. She's gonna come 5th or something like that, and make us all look crazy, and we'll talk about her then. To come 3rd was just ridiculous. And just like she seems to be saying like, hey, I'm back. I'm ready to compete. So if the games goes down this year, she's a major threat.
Push back.
Yeah.
So overall, though, I thought the Rogue Invitational, there was very little technical issues. They brought up their own professional judges into these places.
Yeah.
I thought it was just really well done for an online competition. And yeah, I was overly impressed. Rogue just puts on such amazing stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, Rogue, and I think I had probably unrealistically high expectations for what it was going to be, and it lived up to it for sure. They stayed within themselves. They didn't try and do anything crazy, and I think that was the smart thing. They still gave themselves a well-rounded event. And the one other thing I think is interesting is like Pat Vellner won by the same margin that Tia won. So that's big. Like Tia beat, maybe a slightly better field, but Pat won by exactly the same margin. And again, the top 3 guys on the podium, these were not the events you would expect them to do super well in. Like there wasn't a ton of gymnastics for BKG and Noah Olsen, and there was no like obstacle course or carrying heavy stuff across the field. There was nothing like that and normally Vellner has to dig himself out of a hole and pull himself back together.
Yeah, he actually started out the weekend strong, so which is kind of interesting to see.
Yeah, that makes him kind of unbeatable.
Well, I'm Sandra. This is Rob.
Yeah, and this was